Jai Hind children, welcome in your history class. Children, we are revising the first chapter and that is Rise of Nationalism in Europe. So before starting that chapter, the revision of that chapter, let me tell you children that there is a change in the question pattern also, and first time you will be having source based question from each and every subject of social science. That is history also, then civics also, geography and economics also. Source based questions will be there of 4 marks. Okay. So you have to practice that also children. So already we have started this chapter in the previous class children, the rise of nationalism in Europe, the revision of this chapter. So we have studied about the Frederick Soddy print. There were 4 prints. Then we have studied about the French Revolution which started in 1789, and then we have discussed about the reforms which were taken by the French revolutionaries to create a sense of collective identity, just like La Patrie, La Citoyenne, then tricolor flag was adopted, then uniform weights and measurements were adopted, and then instead of regional dialects, one common language, that was French language, was adopted, and then internal custom duties were abolished, uniform weights and measurements were adopted. So there were many reforms which were made by these French revolutionaries, you can say that, just to create a sense of collective identity, just to create a sense of nationalism. We have also discussed about the Napoleonic Code, which is also known as Civil Code of 1804. The provisions of the Napoleonic Code were that equality will be there, each and every person will be treated equal in the eyes of law. Then right to have private property. Then we have discussed about that no one should be privileged by birth, isn't it children? Then transport and communication system was also made efficient. Then one currency was introduced. So in the very beginning, the French army was considered as a harbingers of liberty, that they are bringing freedom. But later on, the people were becoming hostile, the other peoples of Europe were becoming hostile to the French army because of the various reasons like increased taxation, then forced recruitment and censorship. So we have already discussed that there were many factors which were responsible for creating nationalism or nation states. One was landed aristocracy, that at the time of landed aristocracy they were very small in number, and the whole property was owned, most of the property was owned by them only. Then after the Industrial Revolution, a new middle class arose, and they were in support of that no one should be privileged by birth, rather it should be based on merit. And they were also carrying the idea of nation state. Then comes liberalism. 2 types of liberalism we have discussed in the previous class. One is political liberalism, one was political liberalism, and the other was economic liberalism. Political liberalism means that government will be formed by the consent of the people, there should be equality, and then economic liberalism means uniform weights and measurements, goods and services or capital could be moved freely from one region to another without any hindrances, without any obstacles, and one currency should be adopted. Then we have discussed about Vienna Treaty, isn't it? Conservatives, after the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, and then the European powers, they have made a treaty which was known as Vienna Treaty. And according to this treaty, the main provisions of this treaty were, number 1, again the monarchy system, the Bourbon dynasty should be restored. Then French territories which were taken during the rule of Napoleon should be taken from the France, and we have to stop the further expansion of France. Then liberal nationalists, they were trying to, again, they were just opposed of this conservative regime, conservative people, and they were trying to establish nation state. For that only, Giuseppe Mazzini he formed two secret societies. So conservatives, they were trying to restore the monarchy system, whereas liberal nationalists, they were trying to overthrow the monarchy system, and they were the supporters of the nation state children. So we have discussed all these things in the previous chapter, and then we have seen that the Treaty of Constantinople, which was signed in 1832, Greece एक independent nation बन गया. Then we have also discussed about the romantic imagination, romanticism, which was a cultural movement and which was also trying to arouse a feeling of nationalism among the people through language, then through dance, drama, folklore, etc. So then we have seen that 1830s was a year of great hardship for Europe children because of the increase of population, then migration of the people from rural to urban areas, then there were more job seekers than jobs children, then feudal dues which were imposed on the peasants, then they were facing stiff competition with machine-made goods children. But today we are going to discuss about the unification of Germany, Italy and Britain children. You can see the topic on the screen. So, Germany, Italy and Britain. We are going to discuss about the unification of Germany, Italy and Britain children. First we are discussing about the unification of Germany children. In 1848, in the different regions of the German Confederation, the elite class, the educated class, they were trying to form a nation state in Germany, and there should be an elected parliament. So the liberal children, the liberal people, they were taking initiative for nation building, but they were suppressed by the combined forces of the monarchy, the military and the large land owners of Prussia, which were also known as Junkers. So in German unification, we have seen that in 1848, the people, the liberal nationalists, they were trying to form a nation state. But their effort, their initiative was suppressed by whom? By the combined forces of monarchy, military and Junkers. The large land owners of Prussia were known as Junkers children. From then, Prussia took on the leadership of the movement for national unification. So the Prussian chief minister was Otto von Bismarck. So the question can come like this way also, just like you have to write a short note on the German unification. Or, what was the role of Bismarck in the unification of Germany children? So both the answers are same. Okay, so the liberal nationalists, they were trying to establish a nation state in Germany, but the initiative was suppressed by whom? By monarchy, by military and by the large land owners who were known as Junkers. And these large land owners of Prussia, so monarchy, military and Junkers of Prussia, they were able to suppress the liberal nationalists who were trying to form a nation state, who were trying to build a nation state in Germany children. After then, Prussia, this state of Germany, took the leadership of the movement for national unification. Its chief minister was Bismarck, and he was the architect of this process. So Otto von Bismarck, he was the architect of German unification. How? Bismarck carried this process of German unification with the help of the Prussian army and bureaucracy. There were 3 wars over 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France, ended in Prussian victory and completed the process of unification of Germany children. So in January 1871, the Prussian king, his name was William I, he was proclaimed German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. Again I am telling you, I am just describing it, the process of German unification. In 1848, the liberal nationalists of Germany, they were taking initiative to nation building, but their initiative was repressed by, it was suppressed by the combined forces of the monarchy, military and the large landowners of Prussia. After that, from then, Prussia under the leadership of Bismarck carried the movement for national unification. So Otto von Bismarck, actually he was the architect of German unification. So Bismarck was the architect of this process carried out with the help of the Prussian army and bureaucracy. 3 wars over 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France ended in Prussian victory and completed the process of German unification. And in 1871, the Prussian King William I, he was proclaimed the Emperor, German Emperor, in a ceremony which was held at Versailles. So Otto von Bismarck, in the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles, proclaimed about the new German Empire which was headed by Kaiser William I of Prussia. So the nation building process in Germany had demonstrated the dominance of Prussian state power. So now the new state, the German new state, which was formed under the leadership of William I, it was emphasizing on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial systems in Germany, children. So what we have studied about German unification, that the German liberal nationalists, they were trying to establish a nation state in Germany, but they were repressed by the combined forces of monarchy, the military and the large landowners of Prussia. Then from them, Prussia took the leadership of the movement for national unification of Germany, children, and the chief minister of Prussia was Otto von Bismarck, and he was the architect of this German unification process. He carried this process with the help of the Prussian army and bureaucracy. 3 wars were fought over 7 years. With whom? With Austria, Denmark and France. And it ended in Prussian victory and the process of unification of Germany was completed. So in 1871, the Prussian king, Kaiser William I, he was proclaimed the German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. Now the new state, it was giving emphasis on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial systems in Germany, children. Okay, now let us discuss about the unification of Italy. Yes, as we have already seen in Germany, Otto von Bismarck, he was the architect of German unification. Now let us see who were the architects of Italian unification, Italy unification, children. Like Germany, Italy too had a long history of political fragmentation, and Italians were scattered over several dynastic states as well as a multinational Habsburg empire. So during the middle of the 19th century, children, Italy was divided into 7 states. How many states? So during the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states, and out of 7 states, only 1 state, and that was Sardinia Piedmont. This state was only ruled by an Italian princely house. Okay, so again I am telling you the process of Italy unification, Italian unification, children. How was Italy unified? In the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. And out of 7 states, only 1 state, and that was Sardinia Piedmont, it was ruled by an Italian princely house. So the north of Italy was under Austrian Habsburg. In the center, it was ruled by Pope, and the southern region was under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. And children, you know that even the Italian language had not acquired one common form and still had many regional and local variations. Again I am telling you, during the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states, and out of 7 states, only one state, and that was Sardinia Piedmont, it was ruled by an Italian princely house. North Italy was under Austria-Habsburg, center was ruled by Pope, and the southern region of Italy was under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. So during the 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini, we have already discussed about Mazzini that he had founded 2 secret societies. So during the 1830s, Mazzini, he was trying to put together a program for to unite Italy. He was trying to start a program for unitary Italian Republic. He also formed secret societies like Young Italy and Young Europe Children, but he failed to unify Italy. So first person who was trying to unify Italy was Mazzini. Do you remember that? So Mazzini played an important role. He formed 2 secret societies and he was trying to unite Italy, but he failed. The failure of the revolutionary uprisings both in 1831 and 1848 meant that the mantle now fell on Sardinia Piedmont, and already we have discussed that Italy was divided into 7 states and only one state was ruled by an Italian princely house, and the ruler who was ruling the state, his name was Victor Emmanuel II. Now, after the failure of Mazzini, now the whole and sole responsibility comes on the shoulder of Victor Emmanuel II to unify the Italian states through war. In the eyes of the ruling elite of this region, a unified Italy offered them the possibility of economic development and political dominance. Now, another person who played an important role in the unification of Italy was Count Cavour. He was a chief minister who led the movement to unify the regions of Italy. He was neither a revolutionary nor a democrat. Like many other wealthy and educated members of the Italian elite, he spoke, Count Cavour, he spoke French much better than he did Italian. So he had a tactful diplomatic alliance with France. And it was engineered by Cavour, and Sardinia Piedmont, the state of Italy was succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. Again I am telling you children, the first person who was trying to unify Italy was Giuseppe Mazzini. He also formed secret societies and he had started a program for the unitary Italian Republic, but he failed. Now, the whole and sole responsibility comes on the shoulder of Victor Emmanuel II, King Victor Emmanuel II. The chief minister of the state was Count Cavour. Count Cavour, he was neither a revolutionary nor a democrat, but he spoke French much better than he did Italian. So through a tactful diplomatic alliance with France, engineered by Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont, this state succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. So first we have seen that in we have seen that the first person who played an important role in the unification of Italy was Mazzini. Though he failed, but he had tried his best. The second person was the chief minister Cavour. And with the help of Cavour only, Sardinia Piedmont was able to defeat Austria in 1859. And the third person who played an important role in the unification of Italy was Garibaldi, Giuseppe Garibaldi. In 1860, they marched into South Italy, the kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and succeeded in winning the support of the local peasants in order to drive out the Spanish rulers. As we have already discussed that North Italy was under Austria-Habsburg, then Central was ruled by Pope, and South Italy was ruled by Bourbon kings of Spain, Bourbon dynasty of Spain. So Giuseppe Garibaldi, he was supported by the local peasants. He was able to win the support of the local peasants, and with the help of the local peasants, he was able to drive out the Spanish rulers, and at last Italy was unified. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II, he was proclaimed King of United Italy. So this was the way Italy was unified. In Germany, the person who had played an important role in the unification of Germany was Bismarck. But Italy, in the unification of Italy, three persons they had played an important role. One was Mazzini, other was Count Cavour, and the third was Garibaldi. So again, I'm just telling the process of Italy unification. So during the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. And out of 7 states, only one state, and that was Sardinia Piedmont. It was ruled by an Italian princely house, and the ruler was Victor Emmanuel II. The North Italy was under Austrian Habsburg, the center was ruled by the Pope, and the southern regions were ruled by, or you can say that they were under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. Giuseppe Mazzini, he was trying hard to unite Italy. He formed secret societies also like Young Italy and Young Europe children, but he failed. Now the responsibility was on the shoulder of Victor Emmanuel II, who was the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont. Then the chief minister of the state was Count Cavour. He led the movement to unify the regions of Italy. He spoke French much better than he did Italian, and through a tactful diplomatic alliance with France, which was engineered by Count Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. And the third person who played an important role in the unification of Italy was Giuseppe Garibaldi. Giuseppe Garibaldi was succeeded in winning the support of the local peasants. So local peasants supported Garibaldi, and with the support of the local peasants, he was able to drive out the Spanish rulers from Italy. So in 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed King of United Italy. Okay, now we are going to study about Britain, the unification of Britain, children. In Britain, the formation of the nation state was not the result of a sudden upheaval or revolution. It was the result of a long drawn out process. Actually, children, there was no British nation prior to the 18th century. And the primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones: English, Welsh, Scottish or Irish. And all these ethnic groups, they had their own cultural and political traditions. But meanwhile, as an English nation, it was growing in wealth. It was steadily grew in wealth, importance and power. Now the English people, the English nation was able to extend its influence over the other nations of the islands. The English Parliament, which had seized power from the monarch in 1688 at the end of a protracted conflict, was the instrument through which a nation state with England at its center came to be forced. Actually, again I am telling you, there was no British nation prior to the 18th century. The primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones: English, Welsh, Scot or Irish. And all of these ethnic groups, they were having their own distinct culture and political traditions. But as the English nation grew steadily in wealth, importance and power, it was able to extend its influence over the other nations of the islands. So, the Act of Union, which was signed in 1707, the Act of Union, it was signed between England and Scotland. So the Act of Union between England and Scotland resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. So Act was signed between England and Scotland in 1707, which resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. It meant that England was able to impose the influence on Scotland, and the British Parliament was dominated by its English members. And the growth of British identity meant that Scotland's culture, distinctive culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed. The Catholic clans that inhabited the Scottish Highlands suffered terrible repression during. So, the Act of Union, which was signed in 1707 between England and Scotland, resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And now, England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. Even the Parliament was dominated by English members. And the growth of British identity means now they were suppressing Scotland's culture, its institutions, and in this way they were dominating the Scotland people children. So the Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak their own language, that was the Gaelic language, or even they were forbidden to wear their national dress children, and large numbers were forcibly driven out of their homeland. Ireland also suffered a similar fate. It was a country which was deeply divided between Catholics and Protestants. Two sects, A-C-C-T-S, two sects of Christianity. So Ireland was divided between Catholics and Protestants, and the English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a largely Catholic country. Catholic revolts were again suppressed by Britishers children. Then Ireland was also forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801. So a new British nation was formed, was forced through the propagation of a dominant English culture. So the new symbols of the Britain were the British flag, that is Union Jack, the national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language. They were actively promoted, and the older nations survived. Older nation means Ireland and Scotland. They survived only as a subordinate partners in this union children. So the unification of Britain was a different one. There was no British nation prior to the 18th century, and the primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones such as English, Welsh, Scot or Irish, and all these ethnic groups, they were having their own cultural and political traditions. But English nation was growing in wealth, importance and power, and this nation was able to influence over other nations of the island. The Act of Union was signed in 1707 between England and Scotland, and that resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. It means that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland, and even the British Parliament was dominated by its English members. The growth of British identity meant now they were Scotland's culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed. And even the Scottish people were forbidden to speak their own language or wear their own national dress. Then Ireland also suffered a similar fate. It was a country which was divided between two sects of Christianity, that is Catholics and Protestants. The English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a largely Catholic country. Catholic revolts were suppressed by the Britishers children, and Ireland was also forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801. पहले स्कॉटलैंड आया 1707 में, now आयरलैंड को भी यूनाइटेड किंगडम में मिला लिया गया किस ईयर में? In 1801. So a new British nation was forced through the propagation of a dominant English culture, and the symbols of the new Britain were the British flag, the national anthem, British flag, Union Jack, the national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language. And the older nations means Ireland and Scotland, they survived only as the subordinate partners in this union children. So we have discussed about the unification of Germany, then Italy and Britain children. एक चीज और मैं बता दूं, जो कुछ भी आपके बुक में चैप्टर में दिए हुए हैं boxes के अंदर, you have to study that also. That will also come in the exam. Okay? तो जो कुछ भी न्यू वर्ड्स हैं या पिक्चर्स बनी हैं या फिर जो बॉक्सेस में दिए गए हैं, just go through it. Now visualizing the nation, children. Artists in the 18th and 19th centuries, they found a way out by personifying a nation. मतलब nation को एक person मान करके बात करना. In other words, they represented a country as if it were a person. Nations were portrayed as female figures. हम लोग भी तो कहते हैं ना भारत माता, इंडिया को भारत माता बोल के बुलाते हैं. So artists in the 18th and 19th centuries, they found a way out by personifying a nation. Nation को person मान करके बात कर रहे हैं. They represented a country as if it were a person. Nations were then portrayed as female figures, and the female form that was chosen to personify the nation did not stand for any particular woman in real life, children. It was give the abstract idea of the nation a concrete form. So the female figure became an allegory of the nation, children. And during the French Revolution, artists used a female allegory to portray ideas such as liberty, justice, and republic, children. So similar female allegories were invented by artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. In France, Marianne, a Christian name, children, was underlying the idea of a people's nation. So France की allegory क्या हो गई? Marianne. So her characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and the republic. The red cap, the tricolor, the cockade, and statues of Marianne were erected in public squares to remind the public of the national symbol of unity and to pursue them to identify with it. So Marianne images were marked on coins and stamps also. Similarly, Germania became the allegory of the German nation. In visual representation, Germania wears a crown of oak leaves as the German oak stands for heroism. So allegory means when a nation is expressed through a person, children. So Marianne was the allegory of France and Germany as the allegory of Germany. Last topic is nationalism and imperialism. Nationalism means just to develop a sense of collective belongingness for your nation, children, and imperialism means just to expand the empire by acquiring more and more colonies. Okay, and in the last quarter of the 19th century, nationalism जो है अब वो कोई idealistic, liberal, democratic sentiment से जुड़ा हुआ नहीं रह गया. During this period, children, nationalist groups, they were increasingly intolerant of each other, and they were ready to go to war. The European powers, they manipulated the nationalist aspirations of the people, the subject peoples in Europe, to further their own imperialist aims. When I बोला ना, imperialism means just to expand the empire by acquiring more and more colonies. और अब यूरोपियन नेशंस ने नेशनलिज्म को बिल्कुल imperialism से जोड़ दिया था. मतलब अगर देशभक्ति दिखानी है तो देश का एक्सपेंशन होना चाहिए, चाहे वॉर से ही क्यों ना हो, वो एक्सपेंशन होना चाहिए और इसमें आपको सपोर्ट करना चाहिए. So now nationalism and imperialism became, they were the two sides of the same coin. Imperialism भी एक nationalism का part बना दिया गया था. So the major European powers in the 19th century manipulated the nationalist aspirations of the subjects peoples in Europe to further their own imperialist aims. So the most serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871 was an area called the Balkans. Children, the Balkans was a region of geographical and ethnic variations. अभी modern day में वो कौन से एरिया जिसमें ये सारी countries आ जा रही हैं? रोमानिया, बुल्गारिया, अल्बानिया, ग्रीस, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, and whose inhabitants were broadly known as Slavs. So a large part of the Balkans was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. So the spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans, together with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, made this region very explosive. Children, after 1871, Balkan was a region of geographical and ethnic variation. इसमें ये सारे आते थे, अभी जो मॉडर्न डे में रोमानिया, बल्गेरिया, अल्बेनिया, ग्रीस सब आते थे। इनको ये सारे इनहेबिटेंट्स को हम लोग मिला करके कहते थे स्लैव्स एट दैट टाइम, SLAVS। धीरे धीरे ये बाल्कन्स के ऊपर टर्क्स का कब्जा था। धीरे धीरे ये टर्क्स जो है वो कमज़ोर पड़ने लगे एंड ये जो स्टेट्स थे, जो वेरिएशंस था, ये धीरे धीरे एक एक करके अपनी इंडिपेंडेंस के लिए लड़ने लगे। So a large part of the Balkans was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, and the spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans together with the disintegration of the Balkan Empire made this region very explosive. जैसे जैसे ऑटोमन एम्पायर का डिसइंटीग्रेशन होने लगा, ये रीजन बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सप्लोसिव हो गया, क्योंकि सब आपस में लड़े चले जा रहे थे। वैसे तो इन द 19th century ऑटोमन एम्पायर वाज ट्राइंग टू strengthen itself, मजबूत करना चाहता था by modernization, by introducing internal reform, पर उसे सक्सेस नहीं मिली। So one by one, its European subject nationalists broke away from it and from its control, and they declared independence. So the Balkan peoples, they came for independence or political rights or nationality, and they were using history to prove that they had once been independent but had subsequently been subjected by foreign powers. Hence the rebellious nationalists in the Balkans thought of their struggles as attempts to win back their long lost independence. मैं फिर बता रही हूँ, बाल्कन रीजन जो काफ़ी बड़ा रीजन था, इसमें ऑटोमन एम्पायर का रूल था। धीरे धीरे ऑटोमन एम्पायर जो वीक होने लगा, जिसकी वजह से एक एक करके वो एरिया जो है वो काफ़ी एक्सप्लोसिव हो गया। सब अपनी इंडिपेंडेंस के लिए क्लेम करना शुरू कर दिया था कंट्रीज ने। एंड उनके Balkan people, they were just claiming for independence or political rights, or they were declaring independence, and they were using history कि कभी मेरा एम्पायर यहाँ तक फैला था तो मुझे वो पूरा एरिया चाहिए। As the different Slavic nationalities struggled to define their identity and independence, the Balkan area became an area of intense conflict. The Balkan states were jealous of each other, and each state was hoping to gain more and more territory at the expense of the others. So matters were further complicated because the Balkans also became the scene of big power rivalry. Sorry. अभी तक तो जो रीजन्स इसके अंडर में जो कंट्रीज आ रही थी, जो स्टेट्स आ रहे थे, वो लड़ रहे थे। अब जो है बड़े बड़े यूरोपियन पावर्स की भी नज़र उनके ऊपर चली गई, और उन लोगों ने भी इन एरियाज को कैप्चर करने के लिए उनके बीच में राइवलरी शुरू हो गई। So during this period, there were intense rivalry among the European powers over trade and colonies, as well as naval and military might. So these rivalries were evident in the way the Balkan problem unfolded. So each power, Russia, Germany, England, Austria-Hungary, they were just trying to counter the hold of other powers over the Balkans. And they were also trying to extend its own control over the area. And because the European powers, big powers, are also engaged in the Balkan conflict, which resulted in the First World War. So the Balkan conflict led to a series of wars in the region, and finally the First World War joined. But meanwhile, many countries in the world which had been colonized by the European powers in the 19th century, they also began to oppose imperial domination. So the anti-imperial movements that developed everywhere were nationalist, and they were struggling to form independent nation states, and they were inspired by a sense of collective national unity, forced confrontation with imperialism. So anti-imperial movement also started against this imperialism children. So the Balkan tensions gave rise to the First World War, which took place in 1914 and ended in 1980. So this is all in this chapter, children. Just go to the chapter, and I have already given you the question answers in the app, children. And there is no map work in this chapter. Source-based questions will be coming, children, and you have to read each and everything which is given in the chapter, children. These are things which are in the box, the pictures and all you have to see in details. Okay, so thank you and have a nice day.